Well, hello again, folks. Back to the caddy. I don't know if the light's gonna. Too much light, maybe. Okay. Previous trunk getting flat episode, I was showing how I wet sanded it real quick because it just gives you a basic idea of where you're at. Alright. Of course, you see there's so much different. I don't know if you can see the difference. The gray. Yeah, you can see it from that angle. Alright, that was just a quick wet sand with 180, actually 220, just to see how actual where I was at, and that was scraped off quick. Okay, the right side, even with all the primer and sanding it the way I did, well, most of the primer gets knocked off. That's why you put it on there. That's how you get a flat surface. Some people like to epoxy primer it and fill the whole car with real thin layer of Bondo, filler, whatever you want to call it. I prefer, either way, I guess it really don't matter, but I prefer more putty than filler and more primer than filler, because primer is actually really made, especially the 2K, is made to stick. So anyways, if you look, it looked flat as could be. Now I've knocked it down. I'm gonna have to shut the light off. Okay. Now you can see a little bit better. You see all those little gray spots. I just 180'd it dry to get it really flat. You see all the gray spots over here? Well, even though it looked super flat, alright, with the 2K primer, and I knocked it all down, all those little tiny gray spots were low spots. Now, if there is no piece of steel made that's perfectly straight, I mean, this still needs work, but it feels really perfect. This is ready for some primer, actually, more primer, and the 2K primer will fill it. I'm not going to put it on real heavy, just a tack coat and a nice medium, pretty much, and let it dry. You see, I still got to work on the corners. I see how I did this one part at a time, because there's a line that goes all the way up this car that divides it. So I did it one part at a time, because I still have to get that line straight. And that's, the lines on this car, you think it's just long pieces, but these lines have to be perfectly straight, especially with the paint job that I'm going to put on it, because if they're not, you'll see any little wrinkle. And wait till you see the paint job. Okay, the way it's going to flip-flop, if there is a tiny flaw somewhere, your eyes will never catch it unless you know it's there. But I'm just trying to show everybody how much work and to get an old car surface. This is ready for its last coat of primer, and this I still have to sand, as you can see. All this gray, different shades of gray. That's spot putty, not filler, body filler. It's spot putty. After I get done with this, knock all this down and get all these sides and everything with spot putty and knock it back down the way I want it. After I primer it again and knock it down, then I'm going to take glazing putty and dose the whole car, and that is what you sand out with. Get it super smooth with 400, and you have zero sand marks. Like that line right there, you can feel it. It's still low. With the primer that I'm going to put on it, that should go away. And if it doesn't, by the time I'm sanding the primer, the glazing putty, which, by the way, it sounds like I'm putting all this on there, but 90% of it comes off, as you can see. I mean, that thing was completely covered. And by the time I found all the little low areas in this, you see how much is left. It's a lot of work, a lot of procedure, but when you want it done, I mean, right now it feels like glass. I mean, it's soft as a baby's bottom. Your old lady's ass ain't this soft, but it's still not ready for paint. All right, well, tune in for the next episode of the old caddy restore. Have a good night, folks.